My name is Frank Gaffney. I'm the president of the Center for Security Policy. I had the privilege of acting as an assistant secretary under President Ronald Reagan. And I'm especially pleased to be standing with these folks, standing with Israel, especially my friend Jerry Boykin, one of the most eminent military officers in our country. I want to mention that some other eminent military officers in our country were asked after the 1967 war whether Israel could safely relinquish any territory that it had obtained in the course of its defensive action. They were the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They found Israel could not survive without the territories of the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and Gaza that they had obtained during that war. That stands as truth today as much as it did in 1967. We ignore it at our peril. Just to follow up on my friend Tom Trento's plug for this book, Shariah, The Threat to America, there is in this book on page 90 and 91 a description of sacred space as a concept of Shariah, the political, military, legal program that those who adhere to it seek to impose on all of us, not just the people of Israel, not just Muslims in their own regions, but all of us, including here in the United States. And according to the doctrine of sacred space, Israel must be returned to its Muslim sovereignty of the past. Any peace process that is so foolishly ignorant of that reality, let alone one that imputes to people like Hamas a willingness to live in peace with Israel, is reckless. Not just for Israel, but for us. My concern, finally, is the president's agenda will lead to war. A war that will assault not just Israel, as it has been so many times in the past, but almost certainly engulf the region and perhaps many others, indeed perhaps globally. This must not be allowed to happen. We stand with Israel against such an eventuality. Thank you. One of the reasons we were so concerned is the backdrop to this initiative by the president. In fact, it was almost an afterthought to stick it to Israel, as he did. The rest of the speech was essentially an embrace of the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization that is committed not only to the destruction of Israel, but to our destruction. An organization that explicitly in its creed and in its documents, submission statement that was found in a sub-basement about 20 minutes away from here, in the secret archives of the Muslim Brotherhood, where they said their mission in America was to destroy Western civilization from within by our own hands. Well, here you have the President of the United States not only signaling that he's prepared as long as anybody can win an election. Well, Hitler won elections. Hamas won elections. And you can bet the Muslim Brotherhood is going to win elections, even free and fair elections, in places like Egypt in the not-too-distant future. He said that if they win an election, they're in business. We are going to be giving them money. He's already pledged $1 billion in debt relief and another $1 billion in foreign aid to the Muslim Brotherhood-controlled Egypt that's, I think, in the works. The point is, he not only is reaching out to the Muslim Brotherhood in distant lands, he was explicitly embracing them here by having an imam by the name of Muhammad Majid, who heads not only the all-Dulles area Muslim society known as the Adams Center, again, about half an hour away from this location, but who is the president of the largest Muslim Brotherhood front organization in America. It's called the Islamic Society of North America. Nothing could be more explicit than the president seeks to align this country not with Israel, not with our friends, not with our allies, but with our sworn and determined enemies. This is why I fear we are witnessing him propelling us towards the next horrific war, and it must not be allowed to happen.
I look at this thing from a couple of different perspectives. Having spent most of my professional career involved in the fight against extremism and terrorism, It occurs to me that for decades, America has had a very strict policy of not negotiating with terrorists. That is our national policy. Yet what we've asked the Israelis to do is to negotiate with an organization, that being Hamas, that we, America, have declared to be a terrorist organization. In fact, we had a trial in 2008 called the Holy Land Foundation trial, in which we took people to court and convicted them on 108 counts of raising money in America to support Hamas. They are terrorists. And they were asking Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu to negotiate with them. It's inconsistent with U.S. policy. As a former military man, though, I look at this from a military perspective. I've been to Israel many times. I have worked with the Israeli military. I've walked most of the land in Israel, and I look at it as a land that is on the precipice of destruction if we agree to, or if Mr. Netanyahu agrees to, the 67 borders. We need to remember that today the technology is far more lethal than it was in 1967. The Israelis nearly lost the war on the Golan Heights, as well as down in the Sinai. But today the technology that can be brought to bear against Israel is much more sophisticated and much more dangerous. Given what is being proposed, I want you to focus on this schematic here. And I want to point out to you that just under this truck right here is the Gaza Strip. Today, the Gaza is the place from which rockets and mortars are launched routinely. They're launched occasionally into the Sinai here or into the Beersheba area, but most of the rockets go into the population centers of Israel. Remember that along this strip here is 70% of the Israeli population and about 80% of their industrial capacity. It is also the location of their international airport. Given what the 67 borders would create, we have a situation using this template here where rockets, just the rockets that are used today, the Katyusha rockets that are used today, not accounting for the other types of technology that could be brought in, they would be able to range almost every square inch of the area of Israel that contains 70% of the population and 80% of the industrial capacity of Israel. Israel cannot survive with that kind of border situation. Folks, we have to stand with Israel. Those of us who are standing before you today, and many more who are part of this organization but are not here with us today, but clearly are part of what we're doing here, also believe that we speak for more of the American people than the talk that was given the other day by our administration.
The only way to create a contiguous Palestinian state is to make a unified state discontiguous. Is that what we have in mind? Has anybody said that's what we are proposing to do to Israel? To make it at its narrowest not only 9 miles, which is why the Joint Chiefs of Staff quite properly said it cannot be defended, but also to cut it in half so that it cannot defend its north and its south simultaneously. This is simply disconnected from reality. And why I worry so much about war being the upshot of it is when people behave this way, particularly people like the President of the United States, it creates perceptions. And the perceptions may be completely wrong. But more often than not throughout history, people act on the basis of perceptions in ways that are, well, murderous. And I fear that's what's coming. The specific scenario of this fall's agenda for the Palestinians and their friends involves going to the United Nations Security Council to get a formal recommendation from the Security Council for the recognition of a new member state, Palestine. Now, the President has kind of, sort of, I guess, said he doesn't think that's a good idea, leading some people to think he will veto it. I'm willing to make a bet right now that this president will approve the recognition by the United Nations Security Council of a Palestinian state, because I believe where he has come from, he is going to think that this is the moment for him to do for the Palestinians, this much beleaguered, downtrodden people, what Harry Truman did for the Jews in recognizing the state of Israel. I may be wrong about this. I pray I'm wrong about this, because that will only further catalyze the kind of danger that I'm talking about. But with or without a formal approval, or perhaps an abstention by the United States, which might have the same effect, the UN General Assembly will overwhelmingly support the recognition of such a state of Palestine. And I think, as Jerry has indicated, that will almost certainly result in people like Samantha Power, the President's advisor in the National Security Council, who got us into Libya on the grounds of what she calls, and others have called, a responsibility to protect, will insist that we do the same for the Palestinians, and that will trigger, I'm convinced, the next horrific regional war.
I want to shortly summarize what a great many of these wonderful gentlemen have said, and what Bibi Netanyahu is saying when he says he does not want to have a Hamas state firing Katyusha rockets into Israel. What he means is, right now, they're firing Katyusha rockets into the southern area of Israel. That is almost all fields, agricultural fields. So when they fire a missile, there isn't really many people that get injured by these missiles. But up here, as the general said, is 70% of Israel's population and 80% of her industrial base. And if Israel were forced under the president's plan to give up the West Bank, which is this area here, they would be able to fire, as the general said, these Katyusha rockets, which really are just almost a pipe and almost a mortar, into what is really this highly populated, densely populated area of Israel. And it's almost like giving Al-Qaeda Queens, where Al-Qaeda is going to be right across the East River and firing a mortar into Manhattan. When you fire a mortar into Manhattan, you're going to kill people. When you fire a single Katyusha into this area, you're going to kill people. And bedlam and mayhem. And they fired thousands of these rockets from the Gaza Strip. And if allowed this West Bank, they will fire thousands of Katyusha rockets into the heartland of Israel, which is right here. Thank you very much.
Inevitably, across the bottom of the televisions, CNN, ABC, NBC, breaking news will say Israel is under attack. One of the reasons that myself and the others are assembled here today is to let Israel know that, Israel, you are not alone. My name is Tom Trento. I run an organization called the United West, dedicated to fighting against a Shariah-compliant world, which is the essence of this. Myself, General Boykin, and Frank Gaffney are authors of a book, Shariah, the Threat to America. Yesterday, I was 50 yards away from the most powerful man in the United States of America as he clarified a statement made a few days earlier about a border issue. When you have the most powerful man in the world, more concerned, Janet, about the borders of Israel than the borders of the United States of America, you have a national security crisis on your hands for the United States of America. So we're here today to affirm that though the world may be separating, and many Americans, because more than 50% of the Jewish people at that meeting yesterday applauded the president with a standing ovation. That's a sad display of the understanding of what's going on. But we're here to say, Israel, you are not alone.
If you look at the statements that have come out from Muslim leaders since the President's announcement of the 67 borders requirement for peace. They have all been focused on the fact that they believe that the President has made a very positive decision in support of the, quote, Palestinians. And let me simply remind you of this. Jews were Palestinians as well. It's not just Arabs. So we need to call these people what we are really talking about, which are Muslim Arabs. They can't hate Israel any more than they already do. They have been encouraged by this, just based on the statements that we're hearing from Muslim leaders. And the fact of the matter is also that they fire rockets and sometimes missiles into Israel every day. This is a daily occurrence. You have to be in Israel for some period of time. A Holy Land tour is a great thing. I encourage everybody to do it. But you have to live there. You have to be there on a constant basis to understand what the Israeli people live with today. They live with the threat of a missile being fired, a rocket being fired, or a sniper or a body bomb on somebody on a bus every single day. This is what they live with today. What's it going to be like if they did return to the 67 borders? They are living with the threat of death every single day, but they go on about their lives. They're not going to hate Israel anymore. They are, in fact, encouraged now, and I think that you will see just a continuation of what they've been living with all along. In fact, if anything, you might see a temporary cessation of that. You may see a reduction in the number of attacks on Israel in the short term as a way of not disrupting that, not feeding the concerns of people like us that are standing up here today. But we have to understand what it's like to be an Israeli and to live in a country where you are one missile away from death. And they live with it all the time.